Elena, a short story by Grady Vanwright, read by Trevor Allen. Departure. The train shuddered once, twice, like something forced awake. Steam drifted along the platform, thin as breath. Morning light was steel cold. Elena Marceau climbed aboard, one hand on the rail, the other closing around her paper ticket, as if it were the only solid thing she owned. She took a window seat. The small suitcase, the survivor of every exile, rested at her feet. The conductor called names from places she didn't recognize. Syllables blurred into the hiss of the wheels. It had been 31 years since she'd heard her own country's vowels spoken without mimicry. 31 years of borrowed phrases, polite smiles, debts paid in foreign coin. Now the ticket read home. The word felt borrowed. Outside, a boy sold newspapers no one bought. Yesterday's headline bled. As the train moved, he gave a half wave. His arm faded into the white air like a gesture erased. She faced the window, her features smeared into glass. The wheels began their song, a hard mechanical lullaby. Each rotation pulled something loose inside her. Towns slid by, square houses, shuttered cafes, the first patches of snow. Years peeled backward in smell, the cheap perfume of the city where she lost her money, the lemon soap of the boarding house where she learned to sleep alone. The motion soothed her, made her porous. Thoughts drifted in without permission. "You were 25 when you left," they whispered. "You said you would return once you'd become someone else." She had, and not at all. The dining car waiter passed, white jacket immaculate, silver tray trembling. "Coffee, madam?" She nodded. The cup steamed between her hands. Warmth reached bone and stopped. She sipped, burned her tongue, and smiled at the honesty of it. How rare. Across the aisle, a couple argued softly in a language she half understood. The man all consonant, the woman mostly breath. She caught the rhythm, not the meaning. Accusation, apology, silence. The years when every conversation was a translation, even love. The train crossed a bridge. Beneath it, a river braided slow, silver and silt. The same current ran her veins. The air thinned, salt threaded it though the sea lay far off. She shut her eyes, wheels to surf, surf to pulse. When she opened them, the clouds had changed. Light softened. The face in the glass startled her. Young again, the mouth lines gentler, the eyes less burdened. The sight tightened her throat. She touched her cheek, half expecting it to yield, going back, she thought. Not only returning, but ungoing, unaging. A superstition grew. Every mile east would peel a year from her. By the border she would step out new-skinned, forgiven. She laughed once, softly. A child 2 rows up turned, grinned, waved. Permission. Fields unfolded, flat, endless, damp with the memory of rain. The horizon kept its distance. She closed her eyes. The wheels whispered a word she recognized. Her name. The train pressed on, steady, deliberate, as if it knew where her memories lay. Ahead, the first border, and beyond it the country where she mistook desire for destiny. Her pulse quickened. Not hope, not dread, but the anticipation of seeing herself again, half alive, waiting on the platform of the past. The train slid into the first country under a sky the color of diluted wine. Air through the half-open window carried citrus and coal, a blend she hadn't breathed since youth. It loosened something in her chest. She knew the city before it appeared, the long stone bridge, the river fat with light, markets spilling oranges that glowed even in shadow. She was 23 then, shoes thin, heart louder than sense. The man she met had a late afternoon voice, warm, a little tired. He said he painted boats. Later she learned he only borrowed them. The train rocked. The clatter of cups became the click of their glasses by the quay. He ordered for her without asking. She liked that once. The wine tasted of rust and promise. He spoke of voyages, of colors without names. She believed everyone. Her reflection shimmered. The face looked younger, the mouth just learning trust. In the glass she saw his eyes, blue, too clear, like something that never learned to lie gently. He taught her to laugh with her whole body, a full-breath joy that left her dizzy. They walked the old quarter, the walls sweating summer. He painted her once, or said he did. She never saw the canvas. Too precious to sell, he said. Later she found it in a tavern window, a price scrawled across her throat. She stood there until flies found her. The painting hung crooked, her mouth almost right, the throat crossed by a price that made the whole face obedient. Inside smelled of vinegar and old songs. "How much for the painting?" she asked. "Prices for the throat," the owner said, tapping chalk with his thumbnail. Without the mark, it's nothing. She laid a coin on the bar. Not enough. He pushed it back. You're not the buyer. On her way out, she touched the glass, warm from sun and breath. She wiped a small cloud from her painted shoulder and left it to fog again. The whistle cut the memory clean. The river curved away. The bridge sank into fog. Her pulse slowed to the beat of the wheels. She stayed through one winter. Snow on tiles, turpentine in every room. He borrowed her savings for pigments. Ultramarine, cadmium, cobalt. Colours of faith, he said. One evening she came home to a bare flat. Even the brushes gone. Only the smell of paint remained, thick as deceit. Across the aisle, a woman drew a shawl tight. Tenderness rose for all who wait too long at windows. The rhythm of the train turned to footsteps, chasing the echo of a promise. Papers signed in a small office to sell the last jewellery. No tears. The clerk relieved. She called herself naive, told herself it was only money. It wasn't the loss that hurt. It was knowing someone could see her completely and still choose to leave. Rain or tears blurred the glass. The citrus faded. The rails smelled cold. You were never a painter, she whispered. Not accusation. Obituary, the train entered a tunnel. Darkness poured in. Her reflection disappeared, only motion and breath. When light returned, the lines had come back, the eyes were steadier. Time snapped back. In the rack, her suitcase shifted. She thought of the painting, her throat priced, and wondered if it still hung somewhere gathering dust. Maybe someone bought it. Maybe someone looked at that face and felt a tenderness that cost nothing. The train curved east. Behind her, the country of lovers shrank to colour, then to smell, then to silence. She pressed her palm to the window. The glass was cool, honest. Gratitude flared for the lie, the leaving, the knowledge that love, like art, is often the hunger to be seen. A signal bell rang, sharp and metallic. The wheels took a new measure. Ahead, another border, another self, younger still, ready to mistake duty for salvation. The country of obligation. Dawn changed again. No longer wine, but thin milk. Land flattened into ordered fields, furrows straight as sentences meant to correct. Even memory kept a schedule here. She came not for love, but for safety. After the painter vanished, an advertisement promised work in a textile factory and lodging suitable for unmarried ladies. She was 26, her name shortened to fit the local tongue. The room smelled of starch and boiled potatoes. There she met Henry, the supervisor's cousin. He spoke in numbers and pauses. He asked few questions. Silence without confession was what she needed. A child laughed in the corridor. Elena saw Henry's hands. Square, unhurried, steady on the steering wheel he touched only on Sundays. He offered certainty like a small coin. Not much, but real. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes before she knew the weight of it. The train leaned into a turn. Coffee sloshed and found its level. She thought of their house where everything had a place. Trimmed curtains, even bread. Love measured in chores, not cruelty, correctness. He believed affection should look respectable. She believed it should breathe. She was a good wife at first. Shirts ironed until they held the memory of his shoulders. Quiet when neighbours quarrelled. A nod for his mother's counsel. On Thursdays the mother arrived with soup and advice balanced on top. A clean sill keeps sorrow out, she said, wiping at nothing. And a woman's voice should be the size of a house. What size is that? As large as needed, as small as possible. At night they lay side by side like two pages pressed together. Sundays he drove nowhere in particular, roads like ruled paper. When rain began, he said, "It will rain until Thursday." "Then we'll have time," she said. "For what?" "For being quiet with the windows open." "Open windows invite dust," he said, adjusting the wiper as if correcting a line. She watched his square hands on the wheel. "Do you ever want to be late?" "Being late is for people who wish to be missed." The windshield blurred, then cleared, then blurred again. She pressed her palm to the glass and felt its cool refusal. At the door later, he shook the umbrella dry, precise as a clock. She almost loved him for meaning well. Sometimes his hand sought hers briefly, as if to confirm the inventory of comfort. The window blurred. Her reflection looked 30, hope still there, trained to wait. One night rain drowned the radio. They sat without talking, listening to the roof take the punishment. She looked at him and almost loved him for enduring the noise. Endurance isn't salvation, it only passes. When the factory closed, Henry found a position in a distant town. She followed, though something in her had already stayed behind. He grew heavier, quieter. She wrote letters to no one, notes in the lining of her apron, lists of places to visit, words to speak. He found one and asked if she missed someone. "Only myself," she said. He didn't answer. The wheels hammered faster. A church tower appeared, then vanished in fog. The landscape washed of colour, efficient in its obedience. She rubbed the ring finger that remembered a ring she'd sold long ago. Their last conversation smelled of onions and soap. "You'll come back when you understand how the world works," he said. "Perhaps, but by then it will have changed its rules." He didn't follow her to the door. The carriage rocked. She imagined him old in that same kitchen, hearing the same rain. Maybe he thought of her when the roof leaked. Maybe not. The guess made her smile, half acceptance, half amusement at the futility of knowing. Border station. Soldiers, signal lamps, the formal stamping of time. The brakes hissed, she felt lighter. Years of duty unfastened like buttons. In the glass, her face looked younger, freer, as if each obedience shed now returned a small fragment of youth. The whistle sounded. The train moved on. Behind her, obligation folded into fog, leaving its lessons, love mistaken for refuge, refuge turned cage, hunger waited ahead, the country where she learned to live on little and make it enough. The country of hunger, low hills streaked with soot. Smoke flattened itself against the windows, trying to look in. The air tasted of iron and bread crust, the smell of working places, of hands that counted hours instead of coins. She crossed younger with half her faith already spent. The booth smelled of rope and wet wool. The clerk's thumb was ink to the nail. Purpose, he asked in a language that wore her name badly. Work. He stamped without looking at her. A gavel on a life. Next, he called, then softer to the paper, not her. Keep your ticket. Trains forget. She folded it twice, then twice again, small enough to carry luck. On the far side of that counter, her life began again, smaller, simpler. She found work at a roadside cafe where freight drivers drank their lunch and the radio spoke more honestly than people. Her apron smelled of grease and heat. At first she felt humiliated, serving, scraping, smiling, but hunger taught quick arithmetic. Week 1 she learned to balance 4 plates on one arm. Week 2 to keep her dignity behind her teeth. Week 3 to pretend tips passed for respect. The train jolted over a switch. Coffee trembled in her cup. She saw the cafe's tables, scarred wood, initials carved deep, lives in splinters. Mornings she cleaned them until they shone, as if polish could erase history. Sophia worked there too, 17, mouth full of laughter. A driver called her little bird and reached for her wrist. Sophia laughed, a coin spun on wood. "Careful," she said, turning her arm so his fingers met only apron cloth. "Grease stains, they never come out." The men at the next table looked away, shamed by borrowed shame. Elena set plates down harder than she meant. "Eat while it's hot," she told the driver. He cleared his throat and faced his stew. When he paid, Sophia counted the coins slowly, naming each one as if baptizing it, for the bread, for the hands, for the floor. After he left, Elena wiped the table. Carved initials snagged her cloth. "Smile at the bastards," Sophia whispered, mint and smoke on her breath. "They hate their reflection, happy." Elena smiled, not at the door, but at Sophia, and the room became briefly theirs. The train slowed through a tunnel. Darkness pressed close. Onions, oil, wet cloth, memory and motion shared the same air. She rented a single room above the kitchen. The ceiling dripped in winter, but she liked the hiss of the stoves below, a heartbeat not her own. On nights when the wages counted high, she bought a piece of meat and a bottle of cheap red, sat by the window and imagined the sea beyond the fields, though she'd never seen it. Years thinned and thickened without warning. The owner grew sick. His sons wanted to sell. By then, she knew every supplier, every debtor, every secret in the accounts. They laughed when she offered to buy, until she emptied her envelope of savings on the table. Laughter stopped. By next season, the cafe bore her name, painted crooked above the door, but hers. The train rocked gently, a rhythm of reward hard-earned. She remembered the pride of first ownership, fresh paint, new cloths, coins dropped into her own register. The hunger that had humiliated her became fuel. For a handful of years, she was content. Not happy, content, which is rarer. Through the window, wheat slid by, gold like mornings when the delivery cart arrived. She could hear the rattle of bottles, the murmur of regulars. They called her Madame Courage. half joke, half truth. She believed she had escaped the geometry of dependence. Nothing stays unmeasured. Even freedom keeps a ledger. A whistle cried in the distance. She touched the glass. Her reflection, late 20s, eyes bright with the fatigue of creation. To build anything from the thin materials of need, that was a kind of art. Then the war came like a drunk through a locked door. Soldiers first as customers, then as occupiers. They took what they wanted: coffee, bread, windows, names. The cafe became a barracks, then rubble. When the shell struck, she was in the cellar counting bottles. The sound was not thunder, but a correction. The train's motion steadied her breathing. Hunger again, the old teacher. You returned to the lesson that fed you. She looked at her hands, skin thinning over veins. In the reflection, they were still strong, stained faintly with coffee, steady enough to carry anything. Outside, the sky broke open with light. The next country waited, of ashes where rebuilding meant beginning again with what couldn't last. She closed her eyes. The wheels whispered through her sleep. Enough, enough, enough. The country of ashes. The train slowed. Even its breathing went cautious. Smoke drifted sideways and stayed there, unwilling to rise. The landscape had the color of extinguished fire. Fields once golden, now grey as unwashed linen. Iron in the air, heavier. Somewhere ahead, a man coughed into silence. This was the last country before everything fell apart. She arrived after the first bombs, leading trucks stacked with grain and hope. The sky was already crowded with airplanes, dark crosses circling a pale sun. She told herself the war would stay by the coast. It didn't. She rebuilt the cafe there, smaller, simpler, but hers again. On opening morning, polished tables, clean curtains, the smell of yeast and courage. For a few weeks, the world held. Soldiers came first as customers paying in strange coins, then in uniform without currency, then with guns that made every transaction one-sided. The train jolted, metal crying against metal, the same note the roof made when it tore open. Behind her lids, plaster dust drifted slow in the light. She could taste it, chalk and fear. She ran barefoot into the street, calling for the girl from the kitchen. No answer. Only structures already forgetting their names. After the roof opened, glass fell for hours, a patient rain. She borrowed a broom from the woman next door and swept until the bristles shone with glitter. The neighbor's boy stood barefoot on the step, hair singed in a ring. "It will grow back," the woman said, tying a scarf with the same motion she used for bread. Elena handed her half a loaf. "I can trade for nails," she offered. "Keep the bread," the woman said. Hammers are making their own language today. When Elena returned the broom, the handle left a clean stripe on her palm, pale as a healed wound. She liked the look of it and hated that she liked it. Then came rebuilding. Sweep, lift, nail, mend. She'd done it twice before. The third time, her hands obeyed without expectation. Work turned ritual, absurd labor, though she didn't know it then. Stillness would have meant remembering. Customers returned, thinner, quieter. They counted losses between bites. One paid with ration tickets for a cup of coffee. Another asked if she would trade sugar for a story. She listened. It was what she had. The train passed a row of burned trees, trunks white as bone, their shadows tireless beside the track. The day the soldiers left, the radio stuttered peace in every language, none of them believable. The first morning without fear was the first morning she understood how much had vanished. Back at the ruin, the iron sign still hung, bent but legible. Madame Courage. She laughed until her throat burned. Survival felt like a bent sign that still read. She gathered what could be saved: a kettle, a chair, coins fused by heat. She sold the chair for passage on a ship and left the kettle behind, too heavy for nostalgia. The train rocked gently. In the glass, she was almost that woman, eyes ringed with soot, hair tied with wire. Inside, she felt lighter, as if every ruin remembered burned away a layer of age. To recall suffering was to shed it. Like a snake sloughing dead skin, evening thickened. Smoke lay along the horizon like a second earth. Carriage lights trembled, sparks scattered from the wheels, brief as breath. The rail's noise deepened, almost musical, a hymn for what endures because it refuses to end. A sign flashed past, a new boarder's name half erased. The worst was behind her now, or ahead. What difference? The train did not answer. It carried her onward, tireless. Toward the next forgetting, return night thinned into silver morning. The train ran through mist so dense the world looked rubbed nearly clean. Elena thinned with it, pulse quiet as the clock of a sleeping house. Coal, coffee, wet linen, ordinary scents, almost divine after smoke. She had expected wariness. Instead, buoyancy. Motion purged her. Each clatter of the wheels stripped a little weight from her ribs. The ache in her knees faded. Her hands on the table looked younger, the veins retreating. Even her thoughts brightened, edges sanded. She smiled, faintly alarmed, faintly grateful. Green returned after grey. Villages drifted by like unfinished sketches. Laundry hung in the chill, flags of surrender. In a yard, a woman bent to lift a child, slow and circular, endless. The scene dissolved. She took the small cracked mirror from her bag. The waiter passed again, a sway of white and silver. The cup rattled, a drop cooled on her knuckle. "Pardon, madam," he said, in her first language, careful. She looked up. "It sounds strange in your mouth," she said, tenderness in it. He grinned. "I learned it from the menu." They laughed once together, two travellers under the same rain. The coffee tasted different. In the glass her mouth softened, her eyes cleared. Time had forgotten its direction. She touched her cheek and felt a remembered heartbeat tremble there. The train crossed another border without stopping. No guards, no questions. One whistle, like forgiveness. She exhaled and let her mind unspool. Memory returned without pain. The lover on the bridge, the husband polishing his shoes, the waitress wiping tables while the radio hummed anthems for lives that never happened. Each image rose, shimmered, sank, leaving a faint sweetness, the way sugar clings to glass. For the first time in years she spoke aloud, testing her birth language. The vowels warmed her tongue. "Je rentre," she whispered. "I am returning." True and false at once, like a prayer to an empty church. The conductor passed. "Madame, we'll reach the valley by noon." "Thank you," she said, voice lighter. He smiled with the politeness reserved for strangers who seem familiar. The land grew softer, orchards, low hills, a suggestion of sea. With every mile, the world reassembled into a version she could forgive. Even the ruins in her mind looked gentle now, smoothed by time's indifference. Nothing was truly lost, only misremembered. The train curved beside a river. Sunlight fell through the window in bright slats, catching dust and turning it gold. For a moment the particles were years, and she moved through them like a swimmer, each stroke erasing a sorrow. She drifted near sleep, dreaming not of what had been but of what might have been, if every wound had healed clean. Herself at the cafe door before the soldiers, the sign unbent, the lover returning to stay. The husband smiling without caution. The fantasy didn't shame her. It was maintenance, oil on metal. When she woke, the mist had cleared. The train ran faster, drawn by gravity more than steam. Afternoon gold lay across the fields, though it was barely noon. In the glass, a woman barely 30, dark hair, skin bright with intention. She laughed once. The journey itself was the medicine. Perhaps motion, not arrival, was the cure. The wheels struck a rhythm she knew. Heartbeat, footstep, heartbeat. Every sound on the track said, home. She let the word repeat until it lost meaning and became music. Ahead, a signpost waited with her city's name in fading paint. The pull of it was gentle, absolute. The thought of stepping down filled her with tenderness and dread. She leaned her forehead to the window. The glass was cool, forgiving. "Almost there," she whispered. Fields blurred. The sky widened. Time held its breath before the last station. The signpost. The whistle sounded twice, long and low. The wheels began to slow. Morning had turned to late light. The sun hung sideways over the valley. The train's heartbeat faltered. Every sound waited on her decision. She saw it first. The wooden sign at the platform's edge. Her town's name half peeled but legible. The letters struck like an echo. Small, stubborn, familiar as a scar. Her throat forgot air. Passengers gathered coats. The conductor called softly down the aisle, the old rhythm of arrival. Elena stayed seated, hands on her knees, palms open, awaiting proof. Steam exhaled. The glass trembled through that film. The water tower still leaning, the clock stopped at the hour she left, the same vines clawing the wall. Nothing had changed, or everything had, and sameness was time's disguise. A child outside called to its mother, her mother's name. The sound pierced, clean and exact. Memory unfolded, 14 again. Standing on this platform with a suitcase too heavy and a heart already trained in silence. Her father's shadow behind her, blessing spoken as command. Go then, if you think the world wants you. The train stole her before she could answer. She hadn't written since. Years layered like dust over that single moment. She mistook dust for distance. Now the dust was gone. She rose halfway, then sat. The impulse to disembark was simple, bodily. Her legs refused. Not fear, recognition. She remembered why she left. The world beginning to close in the shape of this town. She fled before it set. A porter shouted about connections eastward. The sound came through the window from another life. Across the aisle, a young woman smiled, ready to leave, face bright with beginnings. Elena met her eyes and almost envied that ignorance. The train gave a small jerk forward. No one noticed. Steam coiled along the platform. The sign slid a little left in her vision. She thought of touching brick, of hearing the river, then let it go. The river would sound exactly as it had then, and that sameness would undo her. She whispered to the glass, "You can't return to what you fled." Her reflection mouthed the words back. Younger, merciful, the conductor appeared. "Madame, this is your stop." She shook her head. "No, not anymore." He looked puzzled, then nodded. At the signpost he lingered. "Are you certain, madame?" She kept her eyes on the wood letters, the way the paint had failed. "It's only a sign," she said. "Sometimes a sign is all people have." "Not people," she said, smiling to make it kind. "Not me." He touched the brim of his cap, a small salute to an order he couldn't file, and stepped back. The door closed, the train moved, the platform receded, the sign shrank to a white scratch in the dusk. Elena sat very still. The relief she felt was not peace but equilibrium, the acceptance that motion itself was what remained. The absurd had always been there. In every departure called choice, she turned her palm up. A fleck of soot landed there, black against the skin, perfect in its uselessness. She smiled. Outside, fields darkened. Inside, the glass held her reflection. No longer old, not yet young, suspended in the present. She watched herself breathe. Enough. The train gave a soft shudder, a sigh through old lungs. The echo ran her knees, the ache that had become part of breath. The seat held her spine, warm where she'd been, cold where she had not. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the fine dust of years. She looked down at them, hands that cooked, signed, caressed, buried, built. Blue threads pulsed under parchment skin. She smiled, surprised they were still hers. Outside, the landscape blurred again, indifferent and endless. The motion soothed her bones and reminded her of their weight. With something like relief, she thought, "You are still moving. That is meaning enough." End of story.